Good morning. Welcome to Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by Dave Murphy and United legend Paul Parker to run the rule over United's game yesterday. Manchester United 0, Liverpool 3. In truth, I was debating with Paul whether or not we just do a rerun of one of the previous heavy defeats to Liverpool because many of the things are going to be common themes that we talk about today. Dave, how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad. Rainy Manchester today, so all good, all good.
Yeah, made the trip over. Unbeaten record Dave had at Old Trafford until earlier this year, and 10 Orgs, Reds have given him some right treats. Johnny says, "Good morning, gents. I'd ask how you were, but I know in pain. Paul, how are you? Are you all right?"
Yeah, I'm good, thank you very much. Yeah, fine.
So not in pain. Dave's not in pain. I, on the other hand, too old enough to know better, but still get sucked into the belief and everything like that. If you're watching live on YouTube, if you can if you can subscribe, share as well on the social platforms that you're on, would really appreciate that. Get your comments in and questions, and we'll try and talk to you with as many questions as you can put on, or get as many comments in the conversation as we can. All right, so let's get into this. Manchester United 0, Liverpool 3. Diaz scores twice in the first half. Salah scores in the second half. The first two absolute howlers from Casemiro. One where he gives away possession, and then falls over in the second goal, and then Cobby's bullied off the ball for the third, which he did struggle yesterday. But he struggled so far this season, to be fair. But when you're playing in a midfield that's as separate as the one that he was playing in yesterday, you can sort of cut him a little bit of slack for that. Casemiro comes off at half time, massively bold decision from the manager, but the system's still the same. United are taken apart in the second half. It's 3-0. Really could have been 4 or 5. There was one incident where one of their players is faffing about in the box. Probably the most humiliating part for United. Maybe it's damning for Liverpool as well. A worrying sign for them is that they were faffing about with it when they could have been clinical and put it away. The XG people will tell you that United had a bigger XG than United yesterday. United scored 0, Liverpool scored 3, and they could have easily scored more. Damaging afternoon that, wasn't it, Paul?
It was. We can go round and round in circles, but it might be better if we just played back something from last season, really, or season before. It hasn't started quite well. I was quite pleased the way it started. After 5-6 minutes, you thought, you're looking for that for any team to start like that, especially when you're at home, especially in the biggest home game of the season. Even though it was early season, Liverpool still was a home fixture, is always going to be the biggest fixture at a home game. You think, great. They just lost their way, but it started before, because everyone has jumped on the bandwagon again about Casemiro. He's easy to blame. He made it that easy to blame, but he still didn't go missing. He didn't go and hide anywhere from it. He still kept himself involved, but it all started sloppy balls given away. The ball was given away so many times in midfield, and it was easy passes, opportunities to put the ball in behind. It was like virtually they'd made it an eye of a needle rather than just hitting his face for players to run onto it. But were the players trying hard enough to run onto it? Were they making their runs in the correct fashion to make the pass easier? There was one with Fernandes, which I saw, and it just seemed Fernandes gave it virtually to Konate, and I thought, why has he done that? But was it the run that was made by Rashford, the angle of his run? Was he running too close to Konate rather than maybe running wider? So, we talk about that on that point, but it all stems really for me. I look at the weakest part for me this season is United, is the front three. Even if Højlund is fit, we still have to question what got us a front three. We look in wide areas, inconsistencies with and without the ball. yesterday the game was made with two fullbacks who are, one doesn't want to run, the other one, Robertson, isn't a good athlete, tenacious, aggressive, but doesn't like running the other way. Never once he can actually try and just run behind him to create space. Maybe then for the fullback to step into, always trying to beat him, getting his head down and just trying to run through people on the wide side, on the other side, I should say. Didn't want to run past anyone on the other side. You're up against a defender who doesn't want to defend, just wants to knock Hollywood passes all day. Never threatened him at all. Never laid a glove on him to try and find out, is he fancy defending under a new manager? Never asked him those questions. Midfield, then it makes it difficult in midfield to find players. I'll leave it to you to talk about the other player on the pitch, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. It was a very, very, tried to get, I'll say, Fernandes in his best role, which he did. We all wanted to see Fernandes really back in that role, being deeper, to be so United then could be more creative from midfield. But we have to say is I'm just so disappointed on what I saw from Kirksey. Very, very Zerchky, I should say. Very, very disappointed. No energy. Looks unfit, and I'm not one to say that. Look, he just doesn't look like a modern day player, and that's unlike, because you should never judge a book by its cover. But I looked at the muscle definition in his legs. I wasn't seeing an athlete there. Just always looking, puffing, never held the ball up. When he did get the ball, too many touches. Liverpool only played 3 touch. Manchester United get it, try trick.
Yeah.
And that was my first little bit really of what I saw yesterday. The worst thing for me yesterday was that I had to sit there for 90 odd minutes and talk about it, to be perfectly honest, because it was hurting, from what I saw the first few minutes, it was hurting because I just knew there was going to be no recovery one.
Yeah, it was tough, especially when 2 goals down. And I think what was disappointing to me, although I could understand it, was you bring Casemiro off, and it's symbolic that he brings Collier on, but you play the same system, and the system needed to change. Not because, like you said, they started quite well, but it wasn't going to work at 2-0 down. You've got to chase the game and try and aggressively put it in. But that was kind of like, well, we'll fix that part that's broken. But that wasn't the point at half time. He needed to chase the game anyway. And a few comments coming in. Dan, morning, mate. Sorry to have missed you yesterday, but monsoon just before you go into Old Trafford, meant that we didn't get to see you. Blame it on the weather, man. Dan says, Casemiro had a shocking off, had to come off. I realise his missus is hurt, but anyone could have a bad game. It happens. That said, he's had quite a few. To counter that, he was a success at Madrid because he had 2 ball players next to him that actually sat deep. At United, he is exposed because the other 2 were played higher, which is true. Will still continue to defend the manager. Tactically, that was terrible yesterday. He asked the fullbacks to play high in the build-up from the keeper, leaving us with 3 at the back. 1 was Casemiro. If you are pressed and lose, this did happen last season, you are in trouble. It wasn't a surprise to see it. Yep, for sure. Robbie says, hello from a rainy Dublin, just to add the mood. Dave's bringing the weather wherever he goes. It's rain. Dan, also, Agartha might help to a degree. We'd have to play someone deeper next to whoever plays at 6. Otherwise, this will continue to happen. On a final point, all too often heads go down, and when we lose 1, we lose 2. That has to change. Yeah, that was the case yesterday. And there you go. Some good mornings. Everyone being friendly in the comments. Davo, very, very disappointing. The response from the players was bad enough in the first half because they were really flat to going behind, I should say. And the response from the manager at the break wasn't great either. We didn't change the system, and we just allowed them to expose everything that was wrong with ours. Like we said, we were talking about yesterday that one of the biggest parts, we had the ole kind of stuff where they were messing about with the ball, and then they were faffing about in the box when they could have easily made it 4. That hurts, right? That's the thing. The 3-0 hurts. We've been there before against Liverpool. Had a few of them, unfortunately. But yeah, go on. Talk me through your thoughts of the game, having sat with it for 12 hours or so.
Yeah, I mean, I was happy with the lineup. To bring in the lid and Xerxes. That I thought we were going to get a hell of a lot more out of the latter. I thought the lid was really, really good. My man of the match yesterday before he was taken off, obviously because he was on a yellow. But unlike Paul, I thought we started bright. I really did. I thought we had a game plan. We were pushing them back. And right up until they scored, I thought we were a better team. I was pretty confident, and then. As Dan pointed out, we went a goal down, and all too often we've seen this in the past, not just in under Ten Hag, but under Solskjaer as well. We just collapse mentally. We just collapse, and that's what happened yesterday. I mean, the 3-0 scoreline, it kind of flattered us a bit because they were toying with us at time, and that's the most embarrassing part of that. Over the 3-0. I mean, I've seen it before. When we played Man City, and they, then there was a game a couple of years back where they won 2-0, but it could have been 8 or 9 or 10-0. They were just playing with us for the game, and that hurt more than the 2-0. That incident in the box summed it all up. I mean, Liverpool were just taking the mick, and it just stuns me as that professional footballers can't react to that they're being embarrassed by another professional footballer. We spoke about this last night. Why they didn't react to it, and they didn't. They just became scared. They're mentally weak. I think Dallo. I mean, I don't even know where he was for the Zaha goal. That was embarrassing. It really was. I went in there really confident because I think the first 2 games, even though we got beat by Brighton, we had a pattern of play. I thought we were playing okay. We were playing better than we were last season at times. And I was confident going into the Liverpool game, especially with the new signing starting, and then the same old. Mentally, we're very, very weak still. I'm still not convinced of the goalkeeper. I think his positioning is terrible at times, like terrible. Never comes off his line, and that Zaha goal was just when you see it over and over again, you can see how far he was to the right. I don't get it. We have big problems. That said, I still feel for Ten Hag, and I want him to succeed. And I think we just got to be a little bit more patient. Liverpool, aside from the FA Cup, it's always been a bit of a beating from them over the past few years. Obviously, we drew 2-2 in the league last year, but I think we expected to lose that about 6-0, so that was a shock. I don't take much out of the fact that Liverpool beat us 3-0. It's just damning that it's at home. It's damning that we always get a spanking off them. We got 2 weeks now until our next match, so hopefully we can get in a better mindset. But it was deeply disappointing yesterday that after we go a goal down, we just seem to collapse. We seem to just think we're not going to come back here, and it's just let's see out the game.
A couple of comments coming in. Dan says, "Good morning, guys. What's your thoughts on the Europa League?" We'll go a little bit later, for sure. Obviously, the game in Turkey. Get Paul's thoughts on. He always likes talking about going back to Turkey, so we'll get that one. My Damned United says, unfortunately, when you don't get a proper preseason and you're rebuilding in numbers, early season becomes your preseason. Ten Hag already said we're not ready. He's right, yeah, and it's true. We didn't look ready, or we don't look ready. But he's comments like, Agata might take weeks, if not like maybe even months to get ready. It's like, well, how long does an athlete need to take to get a sportsman need to get ready? A footballer need to get ready to play a game of football.
And he played all summer, so
yeah, I know. I get the idea that you want to talk about footballers playing too much, but they talk about it as if you have to get them in optimum season to play 1 game a year, and anything more than that is asking too much. But kind of players play 60 games a season. I'm not doing in Paul's day kind of thing, but 60 games a season, between 50 and 60 games was the norm, and they were expected to play the better games of football between the 50th and 60th game. You know what I mean? They were expected to play all the better performances between those games because that was the business end of the season.
But
And
sorry, Wayne. That comment, and I know we're going to talk a little bit later about his press conference, but that comment about the player taking weeks or months to get fit, the Ugarte situation is ideal for a player. He played in the summer in the Copa America. He's had a month off. It shouldn't take him months to get fit again. That's ridiculous to even suggest that.
yeah.
Ridiculous. He's had the ideal preparation. The only thing he hasn't done is played in PSG's first 2 or 3 games. That's it. He's been training. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous comment, and he doesn't help himself with comments like that.
Yeah, we'll talk about his press conference now. In a second, I do want to get on to the Casemiro point, but Johnny says there as well, anyone playing for United against Liverpool should be ready. Biggest game for the club. If you can't get ready or motivated, then I don't know what to say. I almost feel like United have willingly played them, or not willingly played themselves into that kind of position, but have portrayed themselves the way that Ten Hag puts it across, like they're exactly the same pre-season as us. They went to the same place. We played them in pre-season. They look better than us when we play. Well, they won the game handsomely. I know we played all right in that game. They won that game handsomely as well. They've had players at international tournament the same way that we've had them. But they've got the complication of a new manager, whereas we've got a new manager. The manager from the back end of last season should be having a bounce, and we're looking like, we're in disarray. Like, expect that we shouldn't play football until October. It's nonsense. That's an excuse. It's not a good excuse. What we saw yesterday, Paul. I do want to talk on Casemiro a little. You thought that I was being a little bit, there were other players to pick on in there, but Casemiro, like, there were 2 massive errors for the first 2 goals that did come from him. And how big a role does that play in terms of the overall team's tactics? Because we can talk about the team being a massive disappointment. We can talk about the manager not setting up or reacting right at any point in the game, but you can't legislate for one player making 2 massive errors that lead directly to goals. And when that happens, then I mean, how big an influence is that on the game? Are we underplaying that by being critical of everything else?
I mean, they turned out to be big errors. That's what they done. He didn't just put the ball across the goal line and said, "Tap it in, Liverpool, please." Where he lost the second one, I look more at the second one than the first one. The first one, players were doing that a lot before him, giving the ball away, and Liverpool never took advantage of that situation. But they took advantage of that one. The one where he fell over, for me, that sums up football today. Oops, I'm in a bit of trouble. Throw myself to the floor, and ref will give me a free kick. He didn't want to give them yesterday, Anthony Taylor. He wasn't having none of it. He'll be a different referee in his next game, in that sense. That's, but he threw himself to the floor, and that is my pet hate in the game now. I'm in a bit of trouble, got myself in trouble, I throw myself to the floor, and hopefully the ref will just give me a foul. But he didn't give it to him, and he knew it himself by his face, and that's the one that disappointed me more, because a player shouldn't be doing things like that. He just had to fight there, work hard to stay on his feet, and it wasn't difficult. He wasn't up against the strongest player, and I think it was Diaz, wasn't it? I think it was.
Yeah.
So that was quite poor, and now everyone jumps on him because he's the oldest player, and everything. And that, in a way, I understand why his wife done what she done, but I don't think he really needs that, to be perfectly honest. His wife sticking up for him. It's not really what you'd want your missus or even your best friend or your family member to do. At the end of it, it's your job. It's up to you to confront any situation. That's if you want to. But he's an easy one to pick at. I still don't agree that the manager's brought him off. The manager bottled the situation with Rashford yesterday. Rashford had to be involved in that as well as him.
Yeah.
Because he was shirking responsibility big time yesterday. It's embarrassing. And I'm sitting there and I'm fuming inside when I watch it, because I just know that when I was playing, and every player who played with me, players who have played after me for Manchester United, they know that if they were doing what Marcus Rashford was doing, they would have taken words from the manager. They would have got words from their teammates, because you were letting them down. You wasn't working hard. And Wayne, I've said it 1,000 times that, football's all about, you're going to have bad days. like what you were saying just prior there, is that you can't be 100%. You can't wait for this. Football is about you driving your body and your mind to give your best. And if you can't give your best because your feet aren't working properly, you give it with your heart. Marcus Rashford is playing with no heart, no interest, no desire to run. He's letting his teammates down, and he's letting his fans down, the ones who see him as their local hero. He's deserting his responsibility as a footballer by not working hard. And he should have been off at half time with Casemiro as well. He made a big point of Casemiro. All he's done is loaded a gun for Casemiro. He's put him into there where Marcus Rashford should have been in there before him. And I don't just mean in this game, I mean in previous games. But Casemiro's the talking point. He's the one who's going to take it because United got fresh by Liverpool, which is unfair really on him, to be perfectly honest.
No, I think you're right. I think it should have been 2 or 3 changes at half time. I was talking about the system. Bring Ahmad on for Rashford. I did say this like last week before the Brighton game, the team that he picked there, and I'm thinking, I'm not so sure about that because it's forcing his hand into what he's going to do against Liverpool, especially when things didn't go right. Because obviously, his plan was always to start De Ligt against Liverpool. I know De Ligt played all right, but I don't think you were helping it by starting Maguire. So Maguire is culpable for the first goal against Brighton. You bring on De Ligt for him. Do you know what I mean? It's not helping anyone. That the system, and all right, he had to change the system because of selling McTominay and Mount being injured, but you would still want to find a way to play that kind of system. But because we lost the game, he kind of had to be more proactive against Liverpool. So he's made these 3 or 4 changes. Manager under pressure, reacting like a manager under pressure rather than just riding the storm a little bit. We've got a Liverpool fan in the comments. I'll let the comment come in. That was glorious, I have to say. We've had a few of them, Lee. You've had a few of them. We don't have to keep showing off about it. Maybe one day we'll. I mean, the thing is, when United are good, we never go to Anfield and put one over on you like that. I mean, we get I suppose the last minute winners are a good sort of trade off for it. But I mean, good. It'd be nice to have a 3-0 or 5-0 Anfield. I'll tell you that.
But the thing about it, the difference there though, Wayne, is that whenever you go to Anfield, been there, it doesn't matter what disarray Liverpool and what was in over years disarray Liverpool in. Those players know that their life in that city demands that the fact of they give everything. They'd accept losing, but they know those players know they have to give everything, and that's the difference between the teams at the moment. Liverpool players know, and before we used to say that players from overseas don't understand it. I mean, people have said that as an excuse. Those Liverpool players yesterday, every single one of them knew exactly what that meant.
Yeah.
Even when you mentioned earlier about that Ole thing, you saw the way they were passing that ball. They nearly scored off the back of that as well, by the way. They were still progressive. They didn't overplay that. They were so professional yesterday, and it hurt me yesterday when I was working on the radio and having to. I couldn't, you can't back. I'm trying my best not to be biased, but Liverpool made it easy for me not to be biased because of the way they were going about their jobs. I said it earlier, 3 touches maximum. Liverpool players were doing that 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. They were those players come into it. They're all good individual players, but there's a way that Liverpool play, and those players are still playing in that way. Of that, don't overcomplicate it. If there's someone there, if there's 2 people in front of you, go and give it to someone else who might only have 1 person because they're going to be light somewhere. They keep it simple but effective and progressive. Manchester United don't.
All right. That's just
I know. I went a bit far.
Just about enough praise for Liverpool for this podcast. All right, let's get back to talking about Ten Hag and the pressure that he's under. And I'm talking about the team selection. But in the post-match press conference afterwards, he's put on the spot by a journalist who is massively critical of United's style of play. Ten Hag says, "Well, give an example," and the journalist comes out to he goes on to say 5 or 6 different things that you can't shy away from. The critical thinker in you might think, well, there's the injuries to point out, and I think Mourinho in the similar circumstance called everyone scientists or something, didn't they? But whatever it was, he called them. I think it was scientists that. And I get it, like some things are easy to point out. We were caught out too many times. We were sloppy on the ball. We were caught on the turnover a couple of times. But I do feel like that the kind of confrontation in the press conference was a leap from this in this day and age where, back in the day, all right, some reporters would give it as good as they got with with managers, but this one seemed to particularly enjoy digging Ten Hag out of it. He's going like, oh yeah. So you were caught too easily in midfield and this and this and this. And Ten Hag's response just felt so, I think, weak. He tried to laugh it off. He says, we've won the most trophies since I've been here, apart from City. And I do feel like when you look at that, it's a manager who is starting to feel the pressure, is reacting in pressurized ways. Dave, I'll come to you first because I know you've seen it. I'm not sure if Paul's actually seen it. But what did you make of it?
It's concerning. It's concerning. The reporters are there to press the managers. They're there to press the players. That reporter's probably waited most of his career to, Fergie probably ruined his childhood. So that's why he saw that opportunity to, press the manager. But that said, he's just doing his job at the end of the day. The response was poor. To roll out we've won the most trophies, behind City. I mean, the year Wigan won the FA Cup, they got relegated. I'm pretty sure, they don't hold that up and say, well, we won the FA Cup. But you're no longer in the Premier League, mate. It's a weak response, and it's a concerning response, because we've seen this so many times down the years post Fergie. When they start talking like that, and I'm a big Ten Hag fan. I so want them to do well. I really do. I think we're not that far off. We really aren't. There's patterns of our play that I like, but when they start going down this road, the road of, well, look how many trophies we've won in the past 2 years. It's a weak response, and it is concerning. It really is. You can poke so many holes in it, So yeah. I was disappointed in his response. He could have just brushed it off and moved on, and nothing would have been said about it. But it was a weak response. And there's a million things he could have said instead of that, like you and I talked about last year. Most of it was down to the fact that we had injuries. That's the reason why he couldn't play a settled team. It's the reason why he couldn't play a certain way of playing. It just wasn't working. We're only 3 games in. Like I said, I thought we played pretty well against Fulham and against Brighton. I thought the Brighton scoreline was a catastrophe. It didn't deserve to be a 2-1 loss. There's a million things you could have said other than we've won the League Cup and the FA Cup in the last 2 years. That's just, you're just playing into their hands doing that. It's going to bring more pressure.
Yeah, I think the champions' way of doing things is to win when you're playing badly, not lose when you're playing well. That's the Arsenal way of doing things. And we are too much like the Arsenal that we all laughed at for 5 or 6 years. We're way too much like that at the moment. Johnny says, if you're Ten Hag out because we lost 3-0 yesterday, you can't be a fan. We must support the manager and players. It's our obligation as fans and supporters. Like, we're all supporting him. I just think that you have to be realistic and wonder, like, the back end of last season, we were losing so many games. I think the stat that I saw was we've won 5 in 17 in the league, which is relegation form. That's relegation form, unfortunately. And you can't sort of hide away from that. I mean, look, Paul, I talked about the selections there. The selections against Brighton, which kind of forced his hand once it didn't go well. He kind of had to be more bold against Liverpool. And he's, didn't react well at half time. He brings up, he had to make a change. He did have to bring Casemiro off. Like, you're probably right. He should have brought Rashford off as well. Collier came in. I thought Collier started quite well, but then the Liverpool players were finding pockets of space to just isolate him in possession. And, I felt so sorry for him because nobody was helping him out. You don't like to see that. But do you think that the selections and the comments being made by Ten Hag are reflective of a man under pressure?
Oh, 100% now. And he is feeling it. We have to accept if he's he hasn't always come across as a cool as a cucumber kind of fella, but he's very reactive to certain bits. And I think everyone wants him to do well. I definitely do. Dave definitely does as well. But he doesn't help himself by sometimes his comments and more importantly, his actions don't help him. That team against Brighton, I still wasn't understanding why he wasn't given Delit. Delit, give him the opportunity to play against, to start against Brighton. But then to bring him in, against Liverpool is a difficult one. But then to take him off as well, that doesn't help him in his first, in his full debut. I just don't think mentally that doesn't help you when he does that. Then Harry Maguire comes on. You can turn around and say, now because of the way the game's gone, the moment someone gets a yellow card, you have to take them off. It's just mad how the game has suddenly gone that way now. It seems to that's why players now try and get players yellow cards because they know it can affect the game. It's bad madness, really. They need to really look at a way around to sort this situation out with it. So that doesn't help Delit. And then you got a player now, another player who's just come away from another club, and where is his head at the moment? He knows how big that game is. He's been taken off. Doesn't matter what he's done before. He knows that he's been taken off out of it, and it's a bad position to be in. And I look at the fullbacks were asked to play high up. That affected a lot of Liverpool's counter-attacks were built off the back of that.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, do your job in there first. Let the front six see how they shape up, and then you can join in when everything's right. They all work together for the first 5-6 minutes, but someone didn't. The two centre halves, neither of them pulled the fullbacks in with them, and just to say stop them getting in behind, stop them getting in wide areas and able to deliver balls in. And I don't mean crosses. I mean pass the ball into people's feet at angles, and they never stopped that, and that allowed Liverpool to counter-attack. If you see the, I think it's the second Casemiro goal. Sorry, the second Casemiro mistake. The actual count, both the fullbacks had really pushed on. And it was easy for Liverpool. Every time they counter-attack, 4 or 5 players were going in. They're away from home, and that's because they just saw that areas to hit. So Ten Hag didn't help himself the way he went about that game. He needs to really show the fans that he means business and make big, hard decisions. Just make it. It might. He's got to go and do it. What has he got to lose now by making the most obvious decision? He's got it right there in front of him. Go and do it and stand by it and understand it. By losing a game of football by making that hard decision doesn't mean it was the wrong decision. But I think to get the respect he needs from some of those players, because I'm sure there's players there questioning him now because he's not making those decisions.
Yep.
Go and do it. Go and just do it and say, I'm not playing you. And leave him out. Doesn't have to bring him on. Just let him sit there and watch and understand what is needed. Garnacho, you could end up losing him even though he's going about it the wrong way. But Ahmad gave the perfect answer when he come on.
Yeah.
That was a really good positive attitude he had when he come on, got the ball at his feet. First thing he done was to go straight at Robertson. Robertson had it easy up against Garnacho on that right hand side. He was bullied, but Garnacho should have been on the left hand side, not walking to the bench.
So let me just come in. Like Patrick says, put a couple of comments in. Good morning, Patrick. Hope you're doing all right. He says after 15 minutes, it would have been sense to stiffen midfield. Instructs Bruno to drop into midfield for 10 to 15 minutes. The passing options were limited because players were about 15 yards from teammates. Yeah, I mean that's the point I was alluding to with Manu being sort of isolated earlier, and then obviously it happened to Collier. You would think that Bruno, who's the captain of the team, would take that responsibility on himself. You can see that happening to your teammates. Just drop in. But I guess there's the thing of. I know Bruno afterwards, he said, you can't call out players individually, but I think you've got to make the team more compact when you're losing that many chances, and the defenders weren't doing how they were supposed to be doing it. Box, I wasn't even angry at full time, more sad and accepting, which shows we're getting used to current standards. Paul, I do want to come back to that Rashford point because I do agree. It's obviously time for that change. He's giving him his opportunity. you can't complain about not playing or being dropped out of the side. But when he makes those changes, let's say Southampton, whatever he's saying about the number of weeks he needs to play, Ugarte starts in that game, and let's say Garnacho's from the left, Højlund's back on the bench, and Xerxes from the start. And the rest of the sides, how we think it's going to look with Dalot, obviously in there until Shaw gets back, but Delit's going to be starting, all that. So it's going to be his first choice, and the players that we would pick, because you probably think that that's the reaction. Even that looks like it's kind of like, even though it's the side that you would pick, it looks like the last roll of a manager's dice to sort of, do you know where I'm coming from? I'm not trying to say it in a way. I just think like where you've invited pressure onto yourself, and it's made it like pressure has dictated what's happened, because the performances. Don't get me wrong, it takes a great manager. Like I'm not criticizing him too much for waiting for the mistake to happen, because it takes a great manager to have foresight and say, well, I'm going to take you out before those mistakes happen, or before it starts to be the detriment to the side. But when you've seen Rashford underperform for so long, when you've seen Casemiro sort of be a bit rocky, all right, take Casemiro out. But do you feel like even the changes then, they represent something bigger? Because the point of the prevailing point is that United's results need to pick up. The performances need to massively pick up. It's not just the results. You can say, all right, we need to win games. That's obvious, we need to win games. But United actually need to start playing well. And all the players need to start playing well in that system. That's almost as big as the results at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt. I've always when I talk about it and talk about Manchester United and where it come from, for me, is the manager I played under. Performances were so important. Many of the occasions games were won. Many of those we took a rollicking even after winning games, because our performance didn't befit Manchester United. And he built it. He goes, if you haven't got a good performance behind you, how are you going to feel going into your next game, especially if it's a big game? How are you mentally prepared if you've gone into a big game off the back of a poor performance in a game that you should be winning comfortably? And if you win it or lose it, that's how he used to talk. And I think in certain ways that's been forgotten. It's been forgotten. United are in such disarray at the moment, and have been for quite a while as a team and as a club as well. Is that people have forgotten? People virtually coming out and saying a win is a win. Sorry, that's rubbish. That's a cop out. A win is a win. That's terrible for something like that to come out, for people to be saying that. But I'm just looking at it, and I'm looking at what he can do, and in certain ways, what I wanted to do really. I wanted to write it down, and I forgot to do it. I wanted to look at all the other teams, and I would say that I would look at those other teams, and there's a good chance that over 50% of them, I would rather see their wide players playing for Manchester United than what Manchester United have got right now. Yeah. And I will name you two. I will name you one team at the moment, because I was there at the weekend, and I would say West Ham. I would say Bowen and Kudos.
Yeah,
they would improve Manchester United in wide areas right now.
No, yeah.
United are poor in wide areas, and what they've got there, they've got numbers, but their most consistent player doesn't get enough minutes on the pitch, which is Ahmad. Yeah. And we don't really know how good he can be, because he's not getting regular runs. And I learned this, and you've heard me say this 1,000 times, Wayne. I'm sure you have as well, Dave. Is that I was told that my place was gone in the team, because there was a young player playing well in that position, and the manager felt that he had to play him, because if he didn't play him off of what he's been doing, it could affect his confidence and maybe affect his career. Yeah. And that's what could happen with Ahmad with Manchester United, because everyone can see you. Even I was picking up, the fans went on a look every time he got the ball, after he made that initial first drive at Robertson and was successful. He got the ball, and everyone suddenly thought, oh, and they kind of went, they got behind him, even though the belief was, and 99% of it was, the game's dead. he got people off their seats.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, because everyone had belief in what you had an idea, but no one knew what's going to happen next. Liverpool didn't know, while the player had a plan in his head and he was positive. Never saw that before he come on from either wide player.
Yeah. Just a quick point from Patrick there on Ugarte. He says the same thing will happen with Ugarte if he replaces Casemiro. Ten Hag's going to have to sacrifice one of the so-called front four for an extra midfielder. Yeah, I mean, the point is that Ugarte, I mean, he looks like a good combative midfielder, but when you want someone who's going to hold the ball, and United need to get more possession. Although I will say this, even accounting for how bad it was yesterday, with United's fuller complement of players, they did have much more of the ball than what they're used to having. They just didn't use it very well.
Correct.
That's a good point there about Ugarte, though. It's the same kind of thing in there. Joseph, United should have kept Amrabat, and we'll be coming up against him for sure. Patrick also says, I've said for a few years, if Rashford and Bruno are the main cogs in the team, they'll never win major prizes because they're not consistent or disciplined enough. Problem that both eye earners, well, at least the current ownership structure doesn't seem to see that as a massive obstacle for moving players on as we look. So with Sancho, Dave, same question to you as I just put to Paul about the performances and results. You said that we played better against Fulham and Brighton, but we didn't play well. We played all right in patches against Brighton. I thought, there's some good flowing football, but I'm talking about this is close to our full complement. All right, there's a little lack of balance on the left-hand side because we don't have a fullback there. You want to see a United team. This is now Ten Hag's team. No getting away from that. They have to play exactly the way that he wants to play from them. He can't hide away like he did in the press conference and pretend that everything's all right when we can all see that it's not. We can't hide behind the defeat against Brighton and say, well, we played the way that we want to play, because the truth is, if we played how we really wanted to play, we would have been comfortable winners in that game. That we need to start seeing that. We've seen him through the bumps. I feel like the best part of United's, apart from Ole, because I think we played some good football under Ole, but apart from that, the best part of the post-Ferguson era has come in two crises. Injury crises under Van Gaal and the injury crisis under Ten Hag. We've seen a resilience from the crowd and a reaction. And I'm not saying the best performances, but the better highlights of what we've actually seen at the club have happened in those moments of crisis. You want to see it in the moments of stability. So we actually now, he needs results, but he needs those performances, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, we've got, like you said, we have two big problems. We're not winning games and we're not performing. I mean, if we can perform, you're halfway there. It'll eventually will click and you'll start winning games. But we're just not performing, and Ten Hag has to take a large portion of that blame as well. He said in the press conference earlier in the week about Rashford that he basically said that he was baffled at how people don't think he's performing and how he's not playing well, and that just blew my mind. I mean, Rashford hasn't turned up for over a year. As Paul said earlier on, his heart's not there. It really isn't. He lacks any type of discipline, and he does the same thing every time. He's a defender's dream. He is, because you know exactly what he's going to do every single time, and all you got to do is push him into the corner, and he's done. And that said, he did create two very good chances yesterday that we should have at least scored one from. But the rest of the game, he's just terrible. He waltzes around the pitch. And as you said, on that left side, we are a little bit off. Getting Luke Shaw back is absolutely critical, because Dalot, I mean, he spent half the game in midfield. And like I said, that third goal for Salah, he was nowhere to be seen. It was mind-blowing. But we have to start putting in better performances. And like I said, I'm basing the first two games off of what we've seen last season. Aside from the Man City FA Cup final win and a couple of other games last season, we never really performed. And that's where the winning mentality has to come from. You got to start performing, because the wins will come. We're just not performing and we're getting beat. But that said, I do think against Fulham, against Brighton, there was times there that I thought, okay, this is starting to come together now. It really is. It's unfortunate that we got Liverpool in the third game. I think we have a mental block against Liverpool because of results over the past few years. And that just happens. Southampton will be telling how we react. We've had, aside from some of the players that are going off and playing in that, European League or whatever they want to call it these days with the internationals, they should be ready and able to go against Southampton. And Ugarte has to start. The lid has to start. And if Hoyland's fit, just put him in there. I don't get this thing where you have to take 3 or 4 weeks after you come back after an injury to get into the team. We're the only team that do that. No other manager does it. They put their players straight back in because there has to be a consistency. And the only consistency that we have right now is the complete lack of sense that it makes when we bring players back. It's mind blowing. But we need performances. We really do. And we need to get a couple of performances to get the confidence going. Because the mentality is still very weak, and it was showing up again yesterday when we were 1-0 down.
Yeah, Patrick says, my fear for Ten Hag is every defeats to Liverpool tend to lose confidence of boards and fans. Moyes, March 24, LVG, Europa League, Jose in December. Mourinho was more or less gone by that point, but that was a tipping point. And Ole in October 2021. That was my thought yesterday, and I did say after the game that I felt we were possibly 1 goal away from a very difficult week. You don't want to see that. I can't really add much more. So I think it's a really good point. I do think we're in that situation where we need to get that bank of wins and performances, importantly, under our belt in order for him to have enough credit in the bank to survive another one. Box says, I missed the goals under Ole: 9 against Southampton, 6 against Roma, Tranmere, Leeds, 5 against Cardiff, Club Brugge, Linz, Bournemouth, Leipzig, Leeds. Yeah, we scored a few against Leeds, didn't we? Yeah, they're the ones we can reminisce on, not the Liverpool games. Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to sort of canonise something that went wrong in the end, but there were critical moments where Ole was let down. And you would have thought that we could have kicked on, but the structure of the club held him back. I will say, Ten Hag can say that it might take months for Ugarte. He might not have the months to wait. He might not. If he thinks it's going to take months for him to play a game of football, then he might not be the manager by the time he's ready to play. Apparently, look, Dan did mention earlier about the Europa League draw. I do want to talk about this very quickly before we go. Some interesting ties in there. I mean, thank God it's not the European Conference League, which is must be the one competition nobody wants to play when they play European football because of the sound of it. The Europa League being given another reshuffle, Paul, this year. Few more group games because that's what we all love to see. I will say it's brought up some interesting ties this time. We've got Rangers at home, which I think is going to be after Christmas, but a nice tie nonetheless. And Fenerbahce, as Dan was saying earlier, away. You went to Galatasaray. You've been there recently as well to do some filming for BT's little bits that they were doing about the game. What do you make of the Europa League group? Are you thrilled by the prospects of it?
Not really, to be perfectly honest. It's just an elongated marketing ploy. I think really the whole thing is just, what can we sell? And we sell more games of football, European-wise, and then no sides can moan about what they're given domestically, really. So, no, I mean, the thing about it, though, I look at it for the likes of Rangers. I mean, for Rangers, it's great.
Yeah.
For them, they mostly look at what they're doing. But you look at it on the fans' point of view, I don't know. It's just the whole thing of it is, I really can't explain it, to be perfectly honest. And there was this thing about a Super League where they've virtually already got they've already got 2 leagues already now, haven't they? When you look at the Champions League and the Europa League, they are kind of in a way leagues, and one, you play Rangers you play Rangers only once in a league, and the whole thing is quite baffling. There's good bits to it, but there's a lot of it that people are scratching their heads, and some people are seeing little things in the future.
Yeah. Dave, one opponent you don't play home and away. I think that it's more games and less money per game as well because they've stretched it out, but the actual revenue that you get for the games is lower. Rangers, Fenerbahce, Bodo Glimt, Steaua Bucharest under their new name. I mean, it captures the imagination. Manchester United European football, you want us to go. I am being very disparaging about the competition, but I mean, some of the ties are interesting enough. And you look at it, you think United should qualify comfortably for the knockout stages. But it's not really. Yeah, and should. More games, more chances for it to go horribly wrong. As we saw last season in the group stage in the Champions League. And it's United's squad. We know their capabilities to sort of capitulate when it's not as its strongest. There's going to be a lot of rotation in that competition, so there's going to be a lot of disjointed competition performances. That said, Ten Hag in his first season, in all of the competitions, he liked to pick the same side as often as he could. You get the feeling that he might have to do that to sort of navigate through a period of pressure here. And I don't think you're going to be able to afford it with that many games. What do you think? Are you excited by the prospect of 59 Europa League games?
I love the format. I'll be honest. I really do. I love the randomness of it. I wasn't a fan of the Champions League group stages, the Europa League group stages. Like I said yesterday, the top two teams, you get to play the bottom two teams, and home and away and cannon fodder. It was just embarrassing at times. Now that said, we finished bottom of a very weak group last year, but I'm talking in general. It's like it was a poor competition, and it's by no great shapes improved dramatically with this. But I just love the randomness of the draw, that you just play one team and it could be home or it could be away. I like it. I do like it. Now, I might not be saying at the end of the season, but right now I think I like it. I mean, there's a lot of cracking games in there that you normally don't get until the latter stages. Liverpool at home to Real Madrid. United at home to Rangers. There's a lot of really, really good games in there. There's a few of them that a few of the groups that are really, really tough. And I like it. I like the new format. We all know why it was brought in. I believe it was brought in for two reasons. One, it generates more money for UEFA through TV revenue, and the second is I think they're laying the foundations to have another run at this Super League. I really do. They're going to see what the fans' reaction is to it, and to see how it goes from a revenue standpoint. This is basically just it tests the waters again to see if the fans. Yeah. They're throwing out the sample. You can tell people all day long how it's going to be, but until you sample it, you're never going to know. And this is the test to see if that Super League is going to take off, because I do believe that that's what it's for. But I love the randomness of it. I really do. I think that the game at home to Rangers is going to be an absolute cracking game. Away to Jose and Fred to get a hat-trick that night, Amrabat to get the fourth. It's going to be one of the, and I'm going to be eating humble pie again with Amrabat. But yeah, I love it. I do. I think I like the format.
Yeah, I do feel like it's a case of UEFA trying to pull the trigger on the Super League before the clubs break away and doing it. So this is a step towards that. Box says, I'd love to win it come May, though. And Patrick says, biggest pain for me is that all the ABUs, naysayers, Richard Keys, Simon Jordan are being proved right. I had visions of Ten Hag holding off the Premier League title one day. Look, let's not be too sad just yet. There might still be a turnaround. It doesn't feel like it's an inevitable decline just yet, although I might have been saying something different if we'd have lost 4-0 as opposed to 3, as it could easily have been. One thing I will say, call me an old romantic. I'm not involved in UEFA in any way, shape, or form. I don't know anything about creating competitions or the logistics of it all. But I've got a little idea. Hear me out. What about if, the team who wins the league, maybe the team who finished second, they play in the Champions League? You could call it the European Cup. So it's 4 champions only, right? Just hear me out, right? Then the teams who win the cup competitions in their domestic countries, they all go into a European competition. And let's call it
What would that be called?
What's an obvious name for something?
Cup Winners' Cup?
What a name for that. That sounds brilliant. That, yeah, because that means all the teams who've won cups, cup winners, would play in the same cup. And then what you could do, because obviously you're going to need another European competition, so maybe the teams who finish third and fourth in the domestic leagues, they could qualify. And you call that something like the UEFA Cup. What do you think?
I don't think it's going to work.
Great concept, but it's not going to. No one's going to take it on board.
No. All right. Well, call me an old romantic. Call me a dreamer. If anyone thinks that that's a good idea, maybe tag UEFA in this podcast or something. I don't know. Let's see. We've got.
So is this the section where we're allowed to call you things?
No. Well, look at this. We're getting a lot of feedback in the comments here. Sounds too radical. Wayne laughing emojis. That's what they've been saying at UEFA when I proposed this idea to them. But yeah, one can dream. You never know. It's not quite the same as playing round robin games, 10 Europa League games, all the way until after Christmas. Beautiful. Cold January night against Rangers at home. Can't wait. I that's the one game I can't wait for, actually. Oh, look, like Box said, I want United to be winning the competition regardless. Oh, there we go. We've got one vote of confidence in the comments. Patrick, always my guy here. Always my guy. Sounds like a transformative idea, Wayne. You've got my vote. There you go. The run. My campaign for UEFA president begins here. Taking things back to the 80s and 90s, the way that it should be. All right, guys. Thanks for joining the conversation today. Really enjoyed it. Apart, despite the subject matter, we will be back not next week because of the international break. We'll be back the following week to recriminate over United's whatever we do against Southampton. Nobody can predict. Nobody will know. Can't wait for that. Have a great week, fortnight, guys, and we'll be back very soon.